Hello, everyone. Welcome. I welcome you warmly to Ndisco's Village Meeting Podcast. Welcome to Series 3, Episode 18. How are you all doing? It's a great week so far, and hopefully everybody is being productive as we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is your hostess, Dr. Marcellina Ndidi, M.OPARAOJI, bringing you to another topic of interest. Today, I am going to share with you that this is a touching topic. Um, a lot of people, especially young women with little kids, and some women who are also adventuring now into being grandparents, are wondering um, how they go about this particular topic, especially when you are away from the African soil and you find yourself somewhere else in a foreign country, diaspora. Things are a little bit different. So the reason why I could talk on this topic is because my book was based on that. The topic or the title of my book being Raising an African Child in America, which is this one. Um, I don't know if you can see that. And I wrote this book a few years back, and it has led to a lot of discussions and all. A few chapters, this book can be finished in one day, but each chapter, like I always said, is can develop into a book. One of my reviewers called it Boronkunejuano in Igbo language, which means it's a dried piece of meat that when you soak it or when you go into it, could develop into a full-blown um, uh, item to be used for any food dish. So I take it as a compliment. So what are we going to talk about today? We're talking about the children, our God-given ones that we are asked to look over or help mold. Um, but as we go on, we find that one, there are no blueprints out there that will really give you exactly how to raise one. Yeah, there are certain textbooks written that this is how to do this. Even mine, the one I wrote is not how to raise a child, but what we have done around raising a child when people say, oh, why are African kids doing so well? Why are the other ones not doing so well and all that? I relate to some of the things we do as African mothers, actually battling several cultures and several settings in our new environment where we are trying to find our feet. And at the same time, we are rearing younger ones that we are not sure what to give them because we're still learning the culture where we came in, and then they are battling with that. And the ones we bring in with us, asking them to take it all in. So it's overwhelming. So today we're going to talk about one of those aspects of raising our children, but it's not just here in diaspora, but also at the homestead, because I always share that my topics deal with both Africans in diaspora and also at the homestead. You find that this topic is also akin to those who are home because child rearing all over the world, actually, whether you're African, you're European, you are Asian, it presents a little bit of toughness because nobody has the full answer to that. Um, so this is going to talk to us um, about, let me see if I can pull up this topic here. Um, okay. Uh, the causes always. So this is what we are talking about today. Adults raising children. And the question that I am posing to everyone, and that has been, proposed to me, is when does discipline your child become an abuse? And everyone there who has raised a child, taken care of a child, even if it's not from your womb, well, no, or, at one time observe that there are fine lines between these two aspects. We're going to look into what they are today. Um, and at the same token, we have an adage, actually, an African adage, and the world is using that, that says, spare the rod and spoil the child. The question is that adage dead? Because in most areas now we're asked not to do that, especially if you're in diaspora. There is a penalty to that. You can no longer spank or do or rebuke your child in certain ways. So it's a dicey situation, and it's not just this discussion today. It's not just for those who whose children from their own wombs are being raised, but the ones entrusted to you, the young ones that are playing your housemates, the ones that you help your children, help you every day. When is it that you discipline them and then that crosses the line to become a child abuse case? So today we're going to look at few facts that we need to note to avoid crossing this discipline or abuse that we are talking about. Okay. So if I could move again, my cursor is always messing up. So first of all, let us see if we can define the words that we're talking about. So what does discipline a child mean? Discipline a child, according to the sources that I have put together and chosen one that I really picked the strong words out of them, and I highlighted some of them. Shared with us, and this from many schools of thought, that discipline means teaching responsible behavior to a child. When you are doing that, assuming yourself, the adult, self-control when you do that, rather punishing this child's misbehavior. Again, teaching responsible behavior. Today, I'm not going to break those down to the pieces because of time, but I'm going to just hammer on the important things. And again, these are the things that you know. I'm just creating an awareness and reminding us of the fact that this is still ongoing. And many people have ended up, the reason why we put this is that some parents have ended up in jail. Some have ended up losing their children to child services. Some have ended up losing their children to other relatives like the grandparents and all because they have been found to be unfit. So it's really, and sometimes you don't even know when this is happening until it happens. And you start asking yourself what's going on. And this is how some of these parents who have gotten themselves into these situations share their experiences. But they didn't even know. They didn't take it. It was just a split-second decision, and that went sour. It is also a proactive process of training, like they said. You are positively training this child, instructing this child, reinforcing positive behavior. In other words, you are developing them morally, mentally, and socially, encouraging their skills. It doesn't mean you do not rebuke them or tell them when they go wrong, but you are mostly being on the positive side. Yeah. And when you set any discipline, like we are talking about, it should be consistent and age appropriate, because sometimes we treat the younger ones like old and treat the older ones like young. No, it has to be age appropriate. And at the same time, we also share consequences that will reflect when this behavior that we are teaching, they go contrary to them. So in other words, whichever way we do, whichever way we go, we are guiding their development. Okay, all the above should leave the child feeling secure, even if they are upset, because they can get mad. They're human beings. We call them little humans. There is nothing you have in you that they don't have already. The only difference is that whatever they have not been developed to the extent of you, the adults. So we call them little human beings. They have the same feelings. They have the same mental acuity and everything in between. So we treat them that way. So the key components of disciplining your child, of teaching your child responsible behavior, or any young one interested in your care, is to teach them and guide them. Teach them new things, teach them the things they don't know. Listen, and sometimes they would teach you what they know or they've learned. But your point is to correct if it does not match your own thinking of the way it should be for your own family, for your own household. And at the same time, when you're giving instructions, you're also affirming that they are getting it right or wrong. You don't just ask them to do something and you leave that and go and think they will get it right. No. In corporate America, we're called hands-on training. Hands-on training means we show you, then we watch you to do it. And so we observe how you are doing that. And then we give you a free hand to just do and show us and talk through that. So we also advocate that for the children when you are asking them to do something. You're asking them to wash dishes. And sometimes I think it's wrong sometimes for you to ask a child to do dishes and then you come back to do the dishes you've already asked them to do because they didn't do it right. Well, why couldn't you have stood um, right next to them, and when they just use the sponge and the soap and they don't rinse it out well, to touch it and say, okay, this is the way we rinse stuff and all that. So that's just a little example. We can do better. And if and when they have gone contrary to what we are teaching, this responsible behavior, these social, mental, moral skills we are trying to impact in them, we correct. We correct positively. We correct without threat. And we also make them understand the consequences of doing things incorrectly. I mean, we teach some of those young ones have to drive cars the first time. It's not enough to say, oh, put the brake here, or, don't change lanes like that. And you got to also impact in them the consequences of driving wrongly or roughly, which could be accident or something. So you let them know what the consequences are. And at the same time, encourage self-control in them because they can get frustrated when they are not doing things. You've enforced this behavior morally, mentally, socially, otherwise, at the age-appropriate level consistently you're doing the same thing, not changing, you know, um, you know, pathways every moment, and also impacted in them the consequences of doing things incorrectly. This is where sometimes they get frustrated for not getting it right. And this is where I encourage self-control. Take a deep breath. Do it again. Do it slowly. There's another way to do it and all that. And what this is doing for them is helping them self-monitor their energy, self-monitor their emotions, and self-monitor in order to self-control their emotions as well as they are carrying out the duty that you have asked them to do. And so we are asking of this is when we say with discipline. So, but when it goes into abuse, what does it mean? Instead of discipline, abusing a child is generally defined as any act or failure to act by either a parent, a caregiver, any other person responsible for the child's care, whether you are a teacher, whether you are a coach, whether you are somebody entrusted with this young girl or boy to serve you as a maid or a houseboy, they are all your responsibilities, or your nephew or your niece that is just staying with you. It becomes your responsibility not to abuse them, okay? Because that may result sometimes in death, serious physical or emotional harm. Sexual abuse sometimes comes in, the exploitation of this little one, or failure to act to take away imminent risks for them. Okay. At any age under your care, depending on the region or the law of the region, you are the responsible adult, making sure this person or little person is safe. And some regions have uh, age cutoff up to 18 years of age, up to 21. It depends. But when we talk about the different cultures of the world, I can tell you that in some cases it goes beyond 21, because the family is extended, and so everybody's just together. So when we talk about abuse in rearing children, there are classifications of them: commission and omission. Commission is when you do the act is happening from you. Omission is when you forget your responsibility towards them, you neglect them. So we're going to get into that. The first one is physical abuse. We call that accused or commission, because you are doing that. You are hitting them. Any little mistake. I mean, we see that happening a whole lot. Depriving them of food or something to that effect because they did not do something right. They fail to toe the line of the behavior you taught. Shaking them. In the case of little babies crying, you don't like that. You shake them. That some of them get into shaking baby syndrome and have concussion. Sometimes they are punished or they are abused with or at targeted sensitive areas. I remember back in the East, yeah, in Nigeria, in Igbo land, at least that I know, some parents, some of your friends will tell the sad story of pepper being put in their eyes because they did something wrong, or some even pepper being rubbed into their vaginas because of the case that they did something wrong. Those are physical abuses. Loss of control. Then you hit this person till they faint, slapping them around, kicking them, punching, using objects, anything that you can lay you can lay hands on, shoes, slippers, some have even used pestle that is used to and pound food. And some, in some countries have used guns, against their own. That is really uh, shocking to hear. Some people have burned these young ones with cigarette butts or even, sticks from open fire. Some of them have been choked. Injuries that are inconsistent with explanation. You can't even explain why, because the person exerting the physical abuse is enraged, is angry at whatever it is, and forgetting whatever the age of the child development's age, sorry. So this is really sad to think about or look at. The other type of abuse is the sexual abuse. Again, it's out of commission when it's committed by somebody to a child, a young one growing up, and fondling them. Incest. There have been stories, cases of parents, sleeping with their own children, rape of all kinds by relatives, uncles, aunties, and all that, for sexual contact, grabbing them, hugging them inappropriately, commercial exploitations, sending them into prostitution, but and taking pictures of them young. And these are the people that trust, these little ones trust. And sometimes they threaten them and not to say anything. And that's by commission. By omission, omission is the fact that you know this is happening in your home and you neglect that. Some women are known to just turn their head from their husband sleeping with their daughters, or some women sleeping with their sons. So that's wrong. And you see some relatives, sleeping with these young ones, and you, for whatever reasons, you neglect that. You don't talk about it. You don't deal with it. And The prevalent ones are the masters of the house, fondling, sleeping, and trying and raping and all that, to the house help. These are humans of another mother, of another father. But because they are helping you, you don't want to spoil your marriage. You don't want to do it. You, the lady of the house, you keep it, you put in your eyes to the side. That's wrong. And vice versa. And also for the men, seeing the woman do that to a young man that is interested in their care. That's what we're calling abuse, especially of the sexual type. Now, we talk about the emotional abuse or psychological abuse. Again, it's act of commission because somebody is doing that, or omission, but because you see that done and you don't say anything about that. It's the constant, severe belittling of people, berating these young ones, insulting them, threatening them, rejecting them, and isolating them. There's a whole lot going on. And you could see that back in our culture, the Igbo culture, you could hear some parents say, you're not like this person. You don't behave like this person. You're comparing your child with A or B or C. Yeah, sometimes it's subtly done, just subtly done to encourage this person, like, okay, I need you to be up. Or even within siblings, we have heard some first child being compared to second child or third child and all that. Some of them get to become emotional and psychological abuse, that this other one that is being constantly belittled doesn't feel that they are capable of ever doing anything better. So they stay in that state. They're like, what am I good for anyway? Whatever I do, I'm belittled. It doesn't mean that we can give everybody the glory, because sometimes if they're not doing well and you are telling them, oh, you're doing great all the time, without sitting them down to talk to them, then you are not doing them any favor either. So there has to be a balance in these things. The last one there is the neglect and that's the neglect abuse is act of omission, because you're not doing anything particularly physical or anything like beating part. But the physical neglect, which is neglect, has been you know, dedicated as the most common form of child abuse or misconduct or mistreat or maltreatment. So you know that the neglect aspect. So the physical neglect is failure to provide food, failure to provide medical care, clothing, shelter. You know they need it, but because you're trying to punish them one way or the other, you hold that back. It's not that you don't have that. The medical is, you see people nowadays failure to give necessary medical or dental care. Um, if you, for whatever reasons, decide you don't want to, especially those who are doing that for religious reasons, you are neglecting that child. Okay? I mean, you can decide yourself as an adult not to get that medical attention because of your religion, but you have no right whatsoever to put that on a child of a developmental age because you are trying to carry your own religion. Educational neglect is also when you fail to, ensure that this child, attends school, especially when they are developmentally able and ready to go. In the first world and other worlds, the parents are charged when the child doesn't go to school. Believe me, we've had stories, and there are statistics out there that show that the parents who end up, detained or in jail because their children are not going to school. But in some other part of the world or regions, people take that for granted. Education of the child must be done, or else it becomes a neglect. We also have supervisory neglect, which is when you leave a child alone when they are not developmentally able to care for themselves or to others. We see that happen in our communities so much. You see a 10-year-old or 12-year-old or less, you know, being asked to take care of their siblings because we are going to work and all that. You will say, okay, we'll lock them up in the room, and they wonder, what if fire breaks out? What if anything happens? We have seen people who make those mistakes, and then the authorities or somebody blows the whistle and they lose their children to the authorities. Okay. And it depends. There are stated age um, brackets where the children are now capable of staying, on their own in the house for a short period of time. All that. Find out what that is in whatever part of the world you live in. But don't you dare leave that child alone by him or herself, or have the eldest take care of the little ones because you have to work or something. You're trying to save money or something. Because when anything happens, you're going to be sorry that you should have done otherwise. And that leads to a lot of things that we cannot start talking about now. Um, so everybody's looking out for everybody. So the other question, the other discussion aspect is asking people, at what point do you realize as an adult parent or adult caregiver or adult, somebody who a little one is entrusted to, at what point do you realize that you are crossing the line between disciplining that child and abusing that child? Because sometimes things happen, the speed of lightning, and you're looking at it like, what am I doing? And you catch yourself. So disciplining a child becomes an abuse when that child sustains physical injury. Okay, we talk about tapping on the bottom, or something else. But when does it go beyond that? And then the child is bleeding, or cannot sit down for days. That's the question. When is it done in anger? Because when you do that in anger, you inflict pain, you dominate this little person, and they are afraid. Okay. So when you are, that's why most parents wait till their anger, settles a little bit before they deal out the punishment, if you have to, or correct, or discipline. They don't do it immediately; they are enraged, or else the discipline becomes abuse. They can also cause significant psychological harm. Remember when we talk about name calling and belittling? That occurs when somebody is enraged and they say what they are not supposed to say. And again, sometimes it cannot be taken back, especially to a child. Adults can say anything to themselves, but when it comes to a child, they are developing and they think about these things, believe it or not. We abuse them. The line is crossed when actions leave marks. You're beating them in the way that your fingers are showing on your body. Whatever instrument you use to hit them with leaves marks, scars, leaves swelling, leaves blood flow, and all that. That is a problem. Or then you have to rush them to the hospital because they require medical attention. You have used extreme force. You have threatened them. Again, watch yourself as a parent, as a guardian, as somebody who has been trusted with these little ones. Remember, discipline teaches, but abuse causes fear. You don't want when a child sees you, they go into their shells, because they are afraid of you, and they don't come to you for correction or anything. So consider these exceptions to the rule, though. Remember when we say we have the sexual, yeah, we also have contact sexual and non-contact sexual. Sexual contact is when you are the one, touching this child directly. But the non-contact is when you are setting up some pornographic videos, or you showing them or talking them through something, or asking them to do something to themselves so you watch. okay, um, those are really not good acts on a child. Um, you believe that a child is not worthy enough, so you talk to them to the extent that they lose their self-worth, their well-being, their development. So these are the things that manifest. But we must consider some exceptions to the rule. Again, remember when at the beginning I said there's an adage that says, spare the rod and spoil the child. It's because, our forefathers, our parents, and all that believe that some corrections are not just verbal, unlike the rest of the world where a lot of corrections are verbal and they talk quietly, Susan, go sit down in your corner. John, time out and all that. Um, in African context, we don't have a lot of that. And I'm sure some other cultural communities outside of Africa, like the Asian aspects, they don't believe in just telling you. Again, this is where, depending on the state or country laws, some people admit age appropriate corporal punishment. Corporal punishment is also exists in some schools in some parts of the world where the child is corrected, with a little bit of pain, a swat on the bottom, or the use of a little piece of cane, just a tiny little one, to make them realize what they are doing without causing injury. And that is without causing injury, just reminding them that, well, this is correct if you have to. But many never got that. Personally, I lived by the eyes that my mother will look at me, or my dad will just make a certain sound, clearing his throat, or that. Then I know I'm on the wrong. I don't remember being whooped or being swatted on the bottom or anything, but believe me, my parents were capable of doing that. And I've seen my siblings get that little whopping on the bottom or something, but not ever to the rate of causing injury. And I've seen a lot of people around me who correct my swat on the bottom, but not to the injury. But I've also seen those who they punish without thinking, and then they start crying because they didn't mean to do that. However, excessive punishment that results in bruises, welts, broken skin is legally defined as abuse. If we can remember that, we will be okay. Cultural differences, okay? While cultural differences vary, I'll tell you that in African settings, they're not generally, a little bit of correction with corporal punishment that doesn't cause injury, generally not considered abuse. Again, unless you are threatening them, you're creating serious harm, and you're causing them, their self-worth to be diminished. A little bit of that question, but not many are encouraging that. So it depends on who your children are and how you decide to bring them up. But note that wherever part of the world you are in, you got to be cautious on how you discipline your child, because that has a fine line between that and abuse. And again, know the country you are in, know the settings you're in, the state you're in, what they tolerate and what they don't. And these children also in the schools have been they have been encouraged to speak up. And some of them can make up stories and go there in order to really make you, you know, uh, get punished yourself. But then the authorities do not just take their words for it. They observe and they document, and then they will let you know when such is happening. But sometimes they've also seen that some of the children cry wolf, and they decide, we're not going to treat that. In fact, we've seen some of the calls that some of these children make. bring the authorities in for the authorities to really rebuke them for making false calls. So again, if you start early to talk to these children about the consequences of what they do, they will learn. The last point there is poverty versus neglect. So failure to provide a child for a child due to financial inability is generally not treated as neglect. So if you can, you don't have 1 square meal, two even square meals a day, you don't have enough to clothe them or shelter and all that. You are not really held responsible unless you're not making any effort, or some things like drug addiction and drunkenness, alcoholism, and all that put you in that, position. In that case, you are also doing a neglect, not out of poverty, but because you are putting the child at risk for your own chosen behavior. Okay, so this is where I will say we could stop, um, again, talking more about um, this topic. We have given you the basics of it. For those of you who don't think about the consequences of what you're doing before you start disciplining a child, and that's where I put them in quotations, because sometimes we think we're disciplining a child, but we're abusing them. And again, abuse could be interpreted any which way. Okay. So know where the line is, know what you can and cannot do, know your child. There are stubborn children, yes. But the question is, are they that stubborn that you got to hurt them? Again, the call is yours. But note that we have the case where some children out there are going through a whole lot. Whether they are from your womb, some parents are so, deep into whatever else, that they are frustrated to the extent of bringing their frustration to their children, and instead of behaviors of that they should exhibit, of training them in social, mental, and otherwise good developmental skills, they are dishing punishment on them, hurting them. And for those who have service, children, maids, houseboys, who also um, don't treat them like humans because they are not from your womb, or because their parents receiving money for their services. If you are hurting them, harming them, please stop. They are humans too. The mere fact that they are there may not be their choices, but they are doing that in order to say that they're helping their own parents. Correct them. Tomorrow, they may be also the people taking care of you, but then you don't let them get out of hand either. You treat them like your own, you caution them, you sit them down, and make them become good human beings. That when they get on their own, they will remember you. So this is where we're going to stop today's discussion. Again, the question that we'll ask is, as a parent, a guardian, a grandmother, a grandfather, an aunt, a niece, how are you dealing with your age appropriate kids that are under your care? Are you training them positively? Are you teaching them to become good citizens in good behavior, or are you abusing them, knowingly or unknowingly, by commission or by omission, by contact, sexually abusing, or non-contact? So we'll leave it at that. Those are questions for you. And lastly, have we lost the adage spare the rod and spoil the child. The question is left to you. You deal with it the way you feel. But for the sake of the child or the young one, stop if you feel you've crossed the line. Okay? Thank you for listening. And I see you in the next episode. This is your hostess, Dr. Marcellina Ndidi Apology, asking you to subscribe, share the video, and I wish you a good evening. Bye-bye. Or good morning, or good afternoon. Thank you.